We both lived in the same town. It was actually a suburb of Austin, Texas, Cedar Park, Texas. And there is a Starbucks on the corner. We would meet there after kids have gone to bed and would sit at this Starbucks until they would close, and very often until late in the evening after they've closed. We would often watch the people at Starbucks bag up all the trash and throw it over into the dumpster, and Lehman and I would be sitting there talking about the latest thought and the latest evolution of the hash graph. That, what's the latest rabbit hole that Lehman was going down in terms of exploration of how to solve this problem. And so there are a great many memories of this process in that particular location. It's clearly the case that we're wanting to change the face of the internet. We're wanting to make the internet what it should have been from the beginning, but nobody stopped to figure out what's the right way to do this. And the internet grew up in such a way that there are serious architectural flaws and security flaws, and there's a lack of trust in a very real sense. And we see the opportunity to fix that problem. There's a general understanding across the community that what we're doing today in the world of distributed consensus is sort of equivalent in many ways to what happened in the mid-90s with the introduction of the World Wide Web and how that changed society in fundamental ways. And so we're not alone in this. It's obvious to the community. We just happen to have the best technology in the market at the right moment in time. And so we've been given this privilege of being able to be on the leading edge and perhaps usher in this new trust layer on top of the existing internet. And there's a certain camaraderie that comes along with wanting to do something as bold as say we're going to change the internet.
So it's funny, the ledger field is very broad and people come to it from different directions. Some people 30 years ago were coming to it from making computers not have faults. But they're also concerned about how to create cryptocurrencies, or how to create smart contracts, or how to create stored information, or how to do databases. The database world has been doing this for decades. My interest was slightly different. What I wanted to do was to enable collaboration. My goal is that we should have anyone on Earth at any moment can just wave their hand and carve out a chunk of cyberspace, carve out a world of their own without having to pay anything, for free, create a world of their own, and invite some friends. And now we have a shared world. Anybody should be able to create this shared world, and in this shared world, you and I should be able to create documents and create movies and create 3D objects, and we should be able to collaborate with each other and talk to each other. We should be able to interact in ways where I'm not the dictator of the whole world. I can't delete everything arbitrarily. We should have rules enforced. So maybe it's a fair world where I can't delete things you create. Or maybe it's a fair world where we vote on things. Or maybe it's a world in which we have a stock market and you can make sure that the first bid gets matched up with the first act, not the later ones. We want to have a world that you and I can trust, and that our friends that we have invited, and maybe the strangers we have invited, can trust is going to work the way we want. And we can trust that if my computer dies and is erased, I can get all the data back. The data will never disappear. But to do it totally for free, no server involved, just the computers of the people involved, with complete trust without having to trust any one person in any way, and be able to have this shared world that has the fairness and then the speed. I mean, I want to be able to play games in this world. So I want a ledger where I'm recording every single time a person moves or shoots or picks something up. You want to be able to do a game at, we're talking hundreds of thousands of transactions per second maybe. We want huge speed, and we want complete security. We want privacy. We want no one is spying on us. This isn't funded by advertisements. You want to spy on me so I have better advertisements. We want it just to be something that appears out of nothing, that's just living on our computers. And then, when we're able to have a shared world, we want to have multiple shared worlds that connect to each other. So maybe you and I and a few friends set up a little stock market just for ourselves to send things back and forth. The banks do this. They're called dark pools. It's like a little tiny stock market just for a few players that trust each other, sort of, but not entirely. I don't entirely trust you, and there have even been problems with dark pools where maybe banks are taking advantage of some of the information involved, and maybe one bank's hosting the server, but they can manipulate the timing a little bit, and we have to worry about this. I don't want that. I want a completely trustworthy stock market that maybe you and I and a few banks set up, but then I want to have a different stored world that maybe keeps track of a cryptocurrency, and I want them to be able to link so that that cryptocurrency is used to buy and sell our stocks. I want to be able to have a game world that links to a Wikipedia world, where it appears that pieces of Wikipedia are actually part of our world, and as they change in the Wikipedia world, they change in our world. You want to have shared worlds that are interlocking with each other, that allow shared trust even across these things. This is the vision for what we want the internet to be. It will change the way we even look at what cyberspace is, what the internet is, what are networks, even what are computers. This is what's going to happen. And 20 years from now, when the children who are born then are growing up, they're not even going to think about websites and emails as a separate thing, and internet and many of the hacking attacks that we have today. They're just going to take it as a matter of course. That anytime I want to, I can wave my hands. I get a shared world. It's free, it's easy, it's trustworthy and reliable. I can invite 2 friends or 1 million friends, and it all just works. And it will change the way we think of what the internet is. That is what I started being interested in building. And this is the direction that we're going. And this is what distributed ledgers do, is they will ultimately allow us to do that. And there's a lot of rough edges. We have growing pains in distributed ledger technology today, but we'll get over the growing pains. We will get to a world that really is fast and secure and fair, and we will be able to then have this vision of shared worlds, big public ones, little private ones, everything connected. That was the idea. That was 5 years ago. So I like playing with math. So I kept playing around with how would you do it, and I convinced myself, yeah, it's impossible. You can't do that. There's no way that you can have really high throughput because, and also have all these security and fairness properties. You just can't do it. Because ultimately you end up having to tell everybody what you think and then tell people what other people thought, and then you can have millions or billions of extra votes and receipts on votes floating around. It just doesn't work. So I was able to convince myself it's not possible. And I set it aside, and it would come back and haunt me, and it would keep nagging at me. And so I would pick it up again, and I would spend a couple of days going through it and going through the math and realizing, no, I was right. It really is impossible. You can't do that. And set it aside again. And this kept going for years. I have lots of math problems. Some I've been working on for decades. They just, for whatever reason, I don't know why, they just latch onto me and I can't get away from them. And eventually, I said, wait a second. If we're all just talking to each other and you include a tiny bit of extra information, we could each end up with a complete history of exactly how we talked to each other in what order. But if I had that, I would know exactly how information flowed through our community. I would know what you know. I would know when you learned it. I would know what you know about what Alice knows, and what you know about what Alice knows about what Bob knows, and about when they learned it. I would know so much that I could take one of those huge, impractical, impossible, too slow voting algorithms and do it with no votes at all. I could just sit here and say, oh, I know how you would vote, so don't bother voting. Don't tell me your vote, I know it. I'll just pretend that you voted, and I'll just pretend, and I'll just get to the conclusion. And so all we do is we just talk the way we would talk anyway to send out our transactions. We had a tiny bit of information, and it gives us this entire history. The history is called a hash graph. You just get this entire hash graph that lets you see such incredible amounts of information about who knows what when, that then you get consensus for free. But that's where we're going, and we're at the very early stages. I mean, the planet is at the early stages of what ledgers can do. And I think whatever you think that ledgers might be able to do, they can do that, but they can also do more. And we are just as a species beginning to learn what the final limits are. And we're pushing as fast as we can along that path.
And so this is the gateway to the next net.
This is it. This is the next net. Technically, the geeks will always know, well, there's multiple layers and the internet's still down there at the bottom just like it always has been. But for the users, what they think of when they think in their mind of what the net is changing. And that's what's going to be different.
At a low energy cost.
Let's talk about energy costs.
You can run this on your cell phone, am I correct? The
Yes.
processor in a cell phone is enough to actually run
Absolutely.
Hashgraph.
Absolutely. So there are systems that would require you to buy a supercomputer. It's called a mining rig. It's a big box full of specially built chips that don't do anything useful for humanity. They just mine, which means they solve math problems that have no inherent use. The purpose of them is to slow down the network. This doesn't sound good, just on the
Right.
face of it. I'm going to spend a lot of money on a supercomputer, and then I'm going to use a lot of electricity to run my supercomputer, and the whole point of the supercomputer is to slow down the network. But that's what it is. And so proof of work systems work that way. Proof of work is really exciting because it was the first to show us all the possibilities of ledgers. But it's the first generation. We clearly need to move beyond that, and we will, I think, over time. So with Hashgraph, yeah, you could run a full node on your cell phone.
You've accomplished something, a tool that is extremely powerful. What are your hopes and dreams?
My hope and dream is that this pushes us forward along this path to an internet of shared worlds like we've been talking about, where anybody can collaborate with anybody, and the data is stored. You don't have to pay for a server to hold it. It is secure, it is private, where you have the rules enforced. We could set up an organization and trust that elections aren't being rigged because the rules are enforced. You don't have to trust any one person. We could have money and trust that no one's going to inflate the money supply because the rules are enforced and it is guaranteed. We could store the deed to your house, and at any given moment I could know that we're all seeing the same answer as to who owns it, so that you can't sell it to one person and also sell it to someone else at the same time. You'll get caught because it's a publicly visible thing that everyone knows that everyone else is seeing the same thing. I envision a world where the whole internet works this way, where we all know that we can all see the same thing and that rules are enforced, that we have collaboration. And to do that, we need speed, we need security, we need fairness, and my goal is that what we're doing pushes us along that path, because that's the goal that we need to get to, where the nature of the internet itself is different, because it has a trust layer.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and introduce this, and I've gone ahead and fast forward it. So this is from this lovely lady. Her name is Zenobia Gottschalk. What a name, right? But yes, you know how Stellar Development Foundation has their, I don't know, somewhat weekly things that they update regards to podcasts. They do it on the channel. Well, Hedera does one also similar, except for they have a way bigger following. This was reported 2 days ago. Zenobia welcomes the podcast Andrew McFarlane. Now, he's the CTO of Validation Cloud, and it's basically like node staking, node as a service. They have this thing about Web3 infrastructure, but your main focus and your main key takeaway from this should be what he's about to introduce here in regards to EVM compatible access to the network. Now, we know about other ones out there, right? Polygon, ZK EVM, and all these things. And why is that important, you know, to you? Because you might feel as though, like, that sounds important to Des. How is it important to me as a retail investor? Great question. I've gone ahead and fast forwarded this, and he is going to introduce, or she's going to introduce some of these things, and he's going to get into the nitty gritty on this. And then I'm going to give you an idea towards the end of the outline on how big this is for us, as in the retail investors, to have a better idea of how much this industry is worth, not focusing so much on just Hedera as a whole, but the specific industry that he's talking about here. So please smash that like. Let me know if you hold Hedera and how bullish you feel on Hedera, or maybe even how bearish you may feel on it, right? Let's hear the other side of the point of view. But yeah, I already got ahead of it and fast forward it. We're going to play just a segment of her and him talking about why this is a big deal. And then we'll show you another thing from a while back on another particular interview on why it's still a big deal. So let's go ahead and play this. Again, smash that like. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you again to everybody. All your blessings all around. It's been really awesome. All right, here we go.
Building up the other infrastructure, right? All of these, as people build more sophisticated, robust applications, they want that really strong underlying infrastructure. And you all are known for, you know, you're consistently ranked as the fastest global RPC node provider. So why is that important in, you know, what you're bringing to Hedera?
Absolutely. So there's a couple ways to look at that. First, ecosystems throughout Web3 are global. And so it's important that there's low latency, high throughput, no matter where you're trying to interact with a blockchain from on the planet. So that's what we can bring to an ecosystem, that global scale and performance. But it's also important on an application or enterprise level. You always need the ability to push more throughput in order to scale your applications, build more sophisticated applications. And we also use this global scale network as a resilience mechanism. Perhaps most importantly, Node API endpoints are your lifeline as a Web3 business. If you lose that connectivity, you can't communicate with the chain at all. And so our global scale doubles as a resilience mechanism. So with that single URL and API key, you can interact with the entire scale. What that means, if there's any local or regional based issues, you're simply rerouted automatically to the next closest point of entry, and your business continues and has its important resilience to keep on operating and communicating with the network.
Yeah, and these are terms that I think, anyone who has been in enterprise software for a while will be very familiar with, right? That kind of infrastructure, you need that enterprise grade infrastructure if you're going to trust, companies of every size, right? A startup can't be down for any period of time. That's their lifeblood. And a large brand also doesn't want to be down for any period of time. That's their brand reputation. So, that level of robustness, I think you're starting to see become much more important to these Web3 ecosystems.
Absolutely. And perhaps one more important point that goes along with that resilience and infrastructure is SOC 2 compliance. So we've worked very diligently to have that be a part of the platform, which is really the gold standard for data security in the Web2 world. And so we're bringing that to Web3 along with the resilience of the infrastructure.
Yeah, that's absolutely a checkbox for a lot of people as they look at their providers. Fantastic.
Okay, so I got some more about this, right? She talks about the infrastructure. He shares the whole thing in regards to infrastructure. Scalability is the bottom line. Always talking about scalability when it comes to all this, right? Cool Cat Crypto, shout out to you. You always talk about scalability. Can this scale and so on? Well, that was addressed, right? All right, so a little bit of a blast from the past. And if anything, why bring this to your attention in regards to EVM equivalence, right? Great question. Check this out for a second. So you have this, and this comes straight from the HBAR Foundation. And in regards to this specific report, take a look into it yourself, and I'll blow this up a little bit more. Hopefully it doesn't mess up my outline. All right, let's see. Yes, there it is. Nice and big for you guys like Boomer F and Sooner on the couch, reviewing for your phone, you name it, right? EVM equivalence. Why does this matter so much? Well, for one, like it says, it enables Ethereum devs looking to build on the Hedera EVM to do so with minimal friction. Now, we talk about other things like obviously Stellar with Sorbonne. Do you see the common factors that exist? Basically, you do. Devs jumping ship to the other faster, more innovative platforms. We talk about with Stellar, with Sorbonne. We talk about with other projects. Now, obviously, Hedera, right? And there's obviously other ones as well. I mean, EVMs is not some brand new thing, but what about the whole thing with Hedera, right? We're on the subject about it. Well, part of this means that existing industry standard Ethereum developer tooling is integrated with, of course, Hedera EVM. Basically, it's going to uphold the inherent benefits of the hash graph. As we know, when it comes to hash graph, it is not a blockchain. The hash graph protocol, or the gossip protocol, basically is a distributed ledger technology and a very unique one, right? Look at this part. By bringing high speeds, a predictable gas fee model, fair ordering, and the flexibility of the Hedera Consensus Service, HCS, and Hedera Token Service, HTS, to the wider EVM community, developers building on the Hedera EVM will benefit from unmatched power and flexibility. They, of course, state that They firmly believe that this presents an opportunity for developers to unlock the next generation of decentralized applications in Web3. Now, of course, I've said it numerous times, I'll keep saying it. This was pointed out to me in regards to the want and need, or the supply and demand for dApps. And Charlie Shrem of Investor Place, a premium service that I'm subscribed to. I'm not paid by them. I know I mention them quite a bit. But literally throughout early this year, maybe even late last year, he said that by the end of 2023, watch out for dApps. There's still money to be made in 2023. Yes, we feel as though that, things as far as the real bull market and so on could be 2024, 2025. But dApps should start like sounding off, coming together, doing big things on multiple blockchains and distributed ledger technologies and so on. I think this pounds it home even that much more, because now you are starting to see this coming to fruition. Why is that? Examples of, for instance, other devs jumping ship, joining up with the new innovative technologies, Hedera, you name it. Now, there's this whole thing about validation cloud, and the thing I want to mention in regards to this is, developers can now seamlessly read from and write to the Hedera network. There's obviously already Saucer Swap, some of these other ones you're familiar with. But I want to introduce this to you. And if anything, it's a blast from the past in regards to this particular gentleman. And it's down here. And basically, he's going to talk about with this guy on the right. I'm sure you've seen him before. Some of you guys have subscribed to him. A little bit of a smaller channel, but this guy gets some exclusive interviews. But validation cloud, right? It's absolutely critical in regards to Hedera's infrastructure. Why is it critical? Why should you pay attention when some of this stuff seems like it's a little bit of Greek, right? He asks the hard questions. I want you to pay attention to this. This one's a 6-minute long interview. And I'll give you my take on some of this, and I'll give you some stats to back up why we should pay attention to all of this entire presentation, if you will. Smash the like if you haven't done so already. Hopefully you're enjoying the Hedera content tonight. Here we go.
Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for having me, Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Andrew, can you go over what services Validation Cloud offers developers within the Hedera ecosystem, and why these kinds of tools are important?
Absolutely. So first, Validation Cloud is a Web3 infrastructure company that provides Node as a service for developers, enterprises, for many of the top ecosystems, including Hedera. And there's 3 core pillars of the platform. First, performance. Second, resilience. And third, compliance. So performance, we're proud to have consistently ranked #1 on Compare Nodes as the fastest, most performant way to connect into blockchain ecosystems. #1 globally, but also #1 across many of the important jurisdictions for many Web3 users, North America, Europe, and Asia. On top of that, we facilitate high throughput. So global scale, low latency, but also billions of calls through the API per user, which unlocks next generation applications that can scale with our managed service. On the resilience side, not only high uptime, but we've implemented layers of self-healing, global smart routing to maintain your connectivity to Web3 with just a simple URL in your application. And on the compliance side, we've worked hard as a company to strive for SOC 2 compliance, which is really the Web 2 gold standard for infrastructure. All of this is really important for the ecosystem because running, maintaining your nodes, also doing it in a way that is performant, that is secure, that is compliant, is a really difficult, really expensive proposition for Web3 teams. And so what our platform does is really allows you to get started, start building, and not have to worry about maintaining the infrastructure, just having a great service that you can scale your company on. And just one more point here is that there's really 2 core services that we offer for Hedera on the node side. One is mirror nodes, so getting access to historical information, and then the other is the JSON RPC relay.
I know both of those are critical for our builders. So, for those that are watching that aren't developers, can you give us some examples of how developers could leverage your tooling to enable or enhance specific use cases?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's say you want to use a mirror node service. What that allows you to do is gain access to historical information, transactions on the blockchain. What you can do with that is a number of things. You could perform transaction analytics. You could audit your historical transactions. Let's say if you were a professional services firm, you can also monitor for event-driven workflows. That could be if you're running a DeFi application or trading. You may be interested in looking for those events to trigger some actions that you take, or look at your historical performance in terms of your activity. On the JSON RPC relay side, really starts to get EVM-like compatibility on top of Hedera, so you can interact with the protocol in a similar way you could expect on top of some other EVM-based chains. And that can bring in also tooling into the ecosystem. For example, wallet support like MetaMask, which begins to be possible on top of Hedera with this functionality.
Fantastic. That's certainly important stuff. So, how can developers that are interested in using your services, how can they get access?
Sure. So first, you can go to validationcloud.io and select Launch App. And it's really easy sign up process and to get started. So after you sign up, which is very quick and easy, you select Hedera, and you can basically name your API key, select testnet or mainnet, and then we have two tier options. So there's a free tier and a scale tier. So free is really for developers just to get started. We go by a compute unit model, which weights your request depending on how heavy it is. We give you 50 million compute units for free. You don't need a credit card on the free tier, and you can use that with as much throughput as you want, up to 50 million. For more sophisticated users, there is the scale plan, which is unlimited compute units in a pay-as-you-go model. And it's really interesting, very developer enterprise friendly, that there's actually economies of scale for your usage. So the marginal cost of your requests or compute units actually declines as you use more of the API. So we're incentivizing you to use more and generate more activity on chain. We do also have a third category, which is more of an enterprise tier. If you have bespoke needs, you can always engage us directly, and we can help you out with your unique needs in the ecosystem.
So, is there anything else you'd like to pass on to the Hedera community that they might find useful?
Yeah, so to the Hedera community, whether you're just starting to build or you're an already established member of the ecosystem, our platform can enhance your project, and you can sign up for an account directly or contact the Validation Cloud team through our website, as I mentioned, at validationcloud.io. And you can also check out more on our website, our blogs, which we often put out to enhance and complement the platform in terms of what you can do and build on top of our infrastructure. And so look out for that. Look out for our social media. And appreciate you having me on the show today. And we look forward to engaging more and more of the community.
Well, it's my pleasure, Andrew. Thank you so much for swinging by and telling us about Validation Cloud.
Okay. So you may be wondering, and this is valid, right? Anybody would ask this, Max, why show me so much of that technical side of things? The reason why I show that to you is because, like I've always mentioned, can we have examples of utility in motion? The examples he gave, he basically outlined some of the use cases and so on. And in the outline on both particular video clips, that is utility in motion. So why not pay attention to this? All right, let me show you some of my own personal research. And I thought this was pretty cool. Again, it's referencing another particular site, but the stats, the analytics is very well worth paying attention to, especially if you are a Hedera holder. So this industry that he's talking about and so on, let's take you over to what this is all about. So here it is, cloud computing and so on. Cloud computing market by service model, like it says, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, as in software as a service, by deployment model, organization size, vertical BFSI, retail, for instance. and consumer goods, telecommunications, IT. See how like all this is tied in? IT, yes, and manufacturer and region global forecast to when? 2027. I'm gonna come back in the frame on this particular one. So I wanted you guys to understand about other industries that are tied into this. So were you aware that the global cloud computing market, because this is obviously what we're talking about, size was valued at 545.8 billion back in 2022, and it's projected to reach 1.409 billion by the end of 2027. Obviously, that's a typo right there, but it has a growing compound annual growth rate, right? And if you don't know what that means, I'll give you the definition, which is a way to measure how investment or business has grown over a specific period of time. Also takes into account the effect of compounding, which means that the growth builds upon itself, right? How cool is that, right? Compound interest. Like if you ever take an economics class back in the day, right? It's a big deal, right? So anyway, getting into this, check out some of these stats. This is crazy stuff, right? I'll come back out of the frame on this one. Check this out. And basically mentions that, you know, some crazy stuff, right? So I apologize. It wasn't a typo. So, you know, you see the exponential growth of that compound annual growth rate of 17.9%. Like I mentioned before, my parents would have killed for this back in the day, right? They thought it was a big deal. What was it, back in the early 1980s, I believe it was, maybe late 70s. You know, they had some crazy interest rates, I think of like 14%. They would absolutely kill for this, especially in this modern market. Well, the global cloud computing market is projected to be valued at USD 1.2 billion by 2027, growing at a compound annual growth rate, like I said, almost 18% during that forecasted period. How about the Asian market? The market growth in Asia Pacific is attributed to the rising digitalization among enterprises in the region and focused investments to reduce expenses. Market growth can be attributed to the growing, listen to this, guys, adoption of cloud computing and related technologies, globally, right? Acquisitions and product launches would offer lucrative opportunities for market players in the next 5 years. So again, like it says, right? Lucrative opportunities for market players. Who is the market player that we're focusing on today? Right? Absolutely. Hedera. Going more into the last two parts, I want to, show you guys here. Increased automation and agility are expected to drive the cloud computing market, obviously. Rise in the number of SMEs. We talked about this before. What is SME? Small to medium enterprise. Okay. To create new revenue opportunities for cloud vendors and increase in the adoption of hybrid cloud services are expected to provide growth opportunities for the vendors in the cloud computing market. Now, what should be your key takeaway from all this? Well, it should be understanding how all this stuff is tied into, obviously, not just Hedera, let's just be honest about that, right? But some of the other ones, right? This is where the whole concept of be diversified and understand all these different types of industries and what utility that you have. Obviously we gave that Polygon example, was a ZK-EVM, right? We talked about this example with Hedera. We also gave that Stellar example. For me, I hold all three of those. And all of these are basically within my top 5 to top 6, basically. So there is where it's at in regards to that. Thought I would share it with you. Let me know how big you feel this will be. And again, this is just one sector, one industry of many when it comes to Hedera. You heard talks when it comes to Hedera and how big it could basically be. Some people, I even seen, Rich, Common Sense Crypto. He was talking about, like, watch out. So many people are talking about Hedera could easily be in the top 5. Say what you want. This is just one of many different industries that they are a part of. When you look into the nitty gritty of how much these industries are worth, or for instance, like the the compound annual gross rate that we're looking at and so on, man, I mean, I get really, I say gross rate, growth rate. It gets me excited because if anything, it lets me realize the potential that we have here.